Hey everybody, Bob here, Wrenchin with Bob. Hopefully make this informative. Reassembly. For the right fork, you're going to have this this cartridge piece, and this actually slides down into the base of the fork like this. This bolt has I cleaned up the threads real nice, took the oil and stuff off of them, and then I put blue thread lock. It says medium thread lock, and then I'm going to slide the cartridge down in there, the damper is down in there, and try and hang on to it so it doesn't go clunk. The last part did a little bit, and the centering piece that's down there, the way that whole thing is made, should make it so it sits decently in the base. I think the trick is going to be making sure that I keep this whole threaded piece in the center, right, which will mean that it's sitting squarely down at the base. There's a copper crush washer that didn't come out when I took out that inner sleeve, and so that's still sitting in there. I did check to make sure it was in there, and no trouble there. So 6mm hex. I'm going to see if I can find my threads. I'm keeping my finger on the other side, trying to keep that centered so that everything goes in together nicely. And I can see it turn in. So now I've got that finger tight. All right, 6mm hex, and this is on a torque wrench. Torque wrench set to 20 Newton meters. There we go. There's 20. All right. So it's time to add fluid. So a couple things. BMW calls for telescopic fork oil type 2. That's so helpful. Thanks, BMW. So it turns out that that is a 11.5 weight fork oil, and they do not call for synthetic. Nobody's going to find 11.5 weight oil, so I have 10 weight oil. As the history goes, the type 2 oil that they're calling for now at 11.5 used to be 7.5, and they retroactively changed that spec from 7.5 weight to 11.5 weight, I don't know, in 2015 or something like that, it sounds like, from the boards. So I'm going to get a graduated cylinder out and put some oil in there. The spec for the right fork that has the damper in there is 557 milliliters in the right fork if you're not lowered. If you're lowered, it's 582. You're going to have to add it in slowly, though, because the whole damper needs oil in it, and you've got to work the oil into the damper. So I'm going to pour it in slowly, get it up a little ways, and I'm going to work the damper, and you'll hear it sucking the oil in and out of the valve. And the idea is then to get all the oil into the valve and to get the bubbles and stuff out of the oil that's in there, and then get it up to just the right level. And 557 is an estimate, of course. And you could have some remaining from your prior, from before if it wasn't totally dry, etc. So ultimately, what you'd wind up doing is you measure the distance from the top when the fork is all the way down as it is now. That you measure from the top down to the top of the oil, and that should be 13.2 centimeters, 132 millimeters. So and for the lowered suspension, 110 millimeters. All right, while we were away, I poured 500 milliliters in here. 557 is what the spec calls for, so I figure this should be not too much. So I'm going to slowly fill this. All right, so now I'm down to a little less than 100 remaining, so I'm at 4 to 450, and it's getting pretty close, right? It's here. So I think I want to take this moment here and work the valve. And that's feeling like it's got a lot more A lot more work going on. That's good. And so I'm just hearing a little bit of air there at the very end of that stroke and at the very beginning of it. Awesome. And it's really taken quite a bit out of there to put that it's put into the valve and everything. So at this point I'm going to add the rest of my 500 and see where I'm at. And I brought it back up to about here or so. So I'll work it in again, and then we'll figure out whether we take a measurement or we added 25 or what. For safety's sake, I'm going to take a measurement now. I mean, I should be still 50 milliliters away from full from the spec, but I don't want to overfill it and wind up having to stick a towel down there to wick it out or something. So I found a great dipstick for this. This ruler just happens to have a rounded end on that far side before the centimeters actually start, and so I'm able to dip this guy down in here, and then when I pull it up, I can see how much fluid there is at the tip here before it even gets to the 0 mark. So I'm looking for it to be at 13.2, 132 millimeters, but there we are. So there's the measurement. So it's full. I actually purchased new springs, the Yakugar front springs. These are progressive, mildly so, but they are progressive. So here's your originals, right? They are equally spaced basically all the way across the fork, whereas these guys here are the same size, but over here at this end here, right, you can see a tightly wound spring as compared to here, right? So that's your progressive. So this is a soft part of the spring that'll give you a cushier ride, and then this is a stouter spring than the original manufactured one. So this will do better for off-road for me. And in case you're wondering, I picked these up from Ted Porter's Beamer Shop. Ted Porter and Jeff Favorite are fantastic knowledge base people, both for Beamers and other bikes. They've been doing suspension for decades. So talked quite a bit with Ted about my needs and wound up with these springs. He's also got a full cartridge replacement for that right fork that you can do. It's more expensive, but actually has full damping and compression adjustments on the outside of the fork, which is really great. These wound up running me about 160 bucks plus tax, which I thought was a real bargain. So I'm going to put the spring in, which of course is going to raise the fluid level. So now, I mean, we've only got this much to the top of the oil, right? So now that that's in there. All right, so the next piece here is the sleeve. This sleeve goes plastic side down. So here's what I'm going to bring to the party. Clean it first. Don't stick metal shavings like I almost did down in there. And of course you can test this theory. If done with great care, I can very slowly raise it with the magnet. Okay, so it is coming up further. Oh God, there it is. That was it. Right, so that's it. It comes right to the edge. There's the rod, right? And that's with me compressing by ½ an inch or so. So here we go. So I put the nut on the rod, on the end of the rod, by just a bit. And this is going to give me something so that when I've got that whole sleeve up there, that hopefully I'm going to get this underneath the edge of the bolt, hold it with the sleeve, then I can grab the sleeve again, compress it one more time, and hopefully slide the final piece in. The final piece is this here. This guy will slide in like this, and then drop onto the sleeve and hold a nice hold on top of that sleeve. drop this guy down. I'm going to find the top of the bolt again. Find the top of the bolt again with the magnet. There it is. Glunk. Don't you lose that sucker. Don't lose it. Here goes the theory. Look at that. There it is. That's tenacity. I basically just placed the final plate in at the tip so that as soon as there was enough room, it would just slide right into place. So I did that with one hand, and then shoved the tube down a little bit further, and that did the trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly push down the sleeve, which is going to give me some threads, and then I'm going to spin the nut as I've got a little bit of room to do so. So this is more than a centimeter. This is probably closer to 15 millimeters, maybe even close to 18. I probably have a few more threads left, and I don't know. You want to make sure you have plenty of threads from the rod in here so that this never gives way, right? This thing's under a lot of force and stress and stuff. I'm going to spin that down as far as it'll go, and it does go all that way. You wind up with this gap at the top where that piece is here in the lid, right? There's just not a lot of space in there to get like a regular old wrench spanner in there. So I've got this guy to get in there, right? So this will work quite well. So I'll be able to put a nice big wrench at the top and then tighten down the lock nut from underneath. And I want to get 20 Newton meters down. The rod is in place. So this fork is, I think, ready for final assembly, which really is to just raise the outside fork piece up and then tighten this guy down until hand tight. So this will get tightened the rest of the way once it's up in the fork holders, up in the stanchions. So this guy goes up. And they say hand tight. All right. And we have a completed right fork. Ta-da! and at 14 it is it's right on the money. So so the 660 milliliters in my case turned out to be 635. Don't know what to say about that. So, but that's why I went conservative on the way that I poured it in, so that I wouldn't have to take any out, and that's the case. Hip hip hooray. So the next piece here is to take this sleeve with the ring that sits on top and to put it in. Very slow roll down to the bottom. So we're going to put the spring in now. This I am doing slowly so I don't wind up with oil all over myself. And now the oil is right about here, so it's rising, of course. The piston rod goes in next. And then this guy goes on. This ring here has to get down below the edge of the silver, inside edge of the fork, because that's where the snap ring goes. So there's a good inch or so of compression there that needs to be done. It does seem to be a little more than it was when I took it off, which is a little worrisome because it took a lot to get the darn thing off to relieve the pressure. And I did this compression game kind of up underneath the edge of a workbench that's over this way. I'm going to try and do that same thing here and get myself in a position where I can have that thing compressed and then drop that ring in there, slide it in, and then take a tool and sort of tap it into place. That's the idea, and I'm sticking to it. So we're at the bench that is about a 36-inch height on the top, which puts me in a good position, hopefully, to get this guy up underneath there. This wound up being kind of a funny game where I just, on the other end of it, when I took it apart, then I just did kind of this, and then let the workbench down on it. Yeah, it looks like I've got the pressure off of it. With enough compression down there, this ring here, where my thumb's on, it can't go any further down. There's a little shelf that it sits on, but by sitting down as far as it is, it does leave the area where the snap ring goes in there. I'm going to set the snap ring in here, and in theory, put the back end in first, the butt of it first, the edge of the horseshoe. Have these guys come around the edges, and just with a fingernail, nice, I was able to get that side in, and then run this side around as well. And I think it's probably in, but I'm going to check. It wasn't all the way in. I checked with my fingernail. Just by pushing down in there, I got a more solid click and a more positive click in there. And now it's really nicely in position. But here's the edge of the snap ring, is right about here, down in there. And now I'm going to let up on the pressure, and this ring now just rose by a millimeter or two to meet with the snap ring, and now should be held in by the snap ring. I've put this nut almost complete, well, there we go, almost completely down, and what we'll do is we'll wind up, we're going to screw this guy on. This is the cap, so I'm going to screw this on. And I just backed it off just a wee bit from there so that I can have that thing lock the cap on. 17 millimeter for down here, large wrench for up top, and 20 Newton meters is the call, which of course is hard to figure out from here. And now we can lift up the outside edge of the fork and bring the cap into contact with the threads. And they say call this for hand tight for the moment. We're going to tighten this top down to 20 Newton meters also, but not at this stage. We're going to do that once it's on the bike.